myself first. So my name is Natasha Phipps. I am the CEO of WealthShare Real Estate Investment Trust. I'm also a investment specialized realtor here in Alberta for the last 17 years. And WealthShare is definitely a evolution of not just my career, but also the co-founders. And it's something that we're very passionate about. And something that we love to do is host unique sort of evenings, whether it's, highly educational based or sharing. And we like to share kind of what we're all learning along the way in this world of real estate investing. And so this evening, we are joined by a very special guest that is something we're all very excited about. But this really speaks to what we're trying to build with WealthShare as well, is a community. So in the WealthShare community, we have about 250 people in the community that are really made up of a lot of like-minded individuals, like we see here this evening. And a lot of us are passively investing, but also actively investing, and have a lot of knowledge to bring to the table and to share. So this is a very good example of that. So we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to read a little bit here of Judy's bio, and we just are so thrilled to have Judy here with us this evening to share her experience and her knowledge, and have a very open dialogue of what her experience has been and about WealthShare. But before we jump into that, I'm going to put out a few highlights that I dug out of her bio. So Judy began her career in financial services marketing, working for RBC for 18 years, and then later TD Bank for 2 years in senior leadership. So very much leadership role in her space. During this time, Judy developed national marketing strategies and programs adopted by retail branch network across Canada, including many products such as RSPs, mortgages, mortgage life insurance, and GICs. So very familiar with the financial world, and I think we're going to see her expertise shine through tonight in some of these conversations. In addition, she was also the national manager for RBC's mobile mortgage sales force, and she provided marketing support to RBC's global private banking division as well. So that is just a very few points of the type of experience that Judy brings, and that we are very excited to share with her, share with us this evening. So in addition to her sort of, corporate experience, also has been very involved in the real estate investing community here in Canada with the Keyspire Network, which I believe is where we initially first met,
Yeah,
Judy. I would
yeah.
imagine. And you've been a member since 2021, have attended those virtual summits that we all absolutely love, and also has been a member in RAIN as well. So I've been affiliated with both of these groups for over a decade now. And I just thank you so much for being here today, Judy.
Oh, Natasha, it's my pleasure. I really do love what you guys are doing with the Wealth Share REIT. So I think about how I went about trying to learn more about investments outside of the traditional banking world.
Mm,
And it's these kinds of webinars and seminars where people get information. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
important. Yeah, and I'm happy to be part of it.
100%. I find I'm always so impressed too by how like sharing the real estate investing community is. And yeah, I mean, obviously this is a great example of that, but let's dive into it. So before I obviously shared a little bit, but I'd love to hear more from your perspective, a little bit more about your professional background and how that sort of like tied into your kind of success in the real estate investment space as well.
Okay. Well, to build on what you were saying, I'm currently an interior designer. I switched careers about 7 years ago and have spent most of my career in financial services and started out, well, my whole time I was with RBC, I was in their head office in Toronto, developing marketing campaigns for just about every retail product you can think of. And that would typically look like perhaps a TV ad, or back then newspaper ads were still a big thing. and then also developing point of sale material for the advisors and the mortgage lenders and branch staff, so that when clients would see the ad, they would come into the branch and staff were equipped with the information they needed to talk about the product or the promotion that was on at the time. And then I moved over into global private banking. And at that time, RBC had about 80 offices around the world. And that was just a super interesting experience. And I learned about the world of wealth management, investing, at a high net worth client level, and particularly the trust services. So, for families who've got homes and businesses in more than one country, how do they structure that and so on? And when I think about my investing journey, it really closely mirrored my career. So when I first started putting money into my RSP, I put it into the branch mutual funds. And then as it grew to a certain point and I moved over into the wealth management area, I was able to put it into a portfolio that was more broadly diversified. And the time that I started looking around for other ways to invest, not that there's anything wrong with what I was doing in the banking world. And in fact, I still have about half of my RSP there. And I decided to take the other half and look into, how I could do better with my investments. And I had a real kind of aha moment. I actually went back to school for 2 years to get my interior decorating diploma. And at the time I graduated, COVID hit. So everything was shut down, and we all know what happened there. So I had a good 8 or 9 months on my hands. And I started looking at my RSP statement. In fact, I've got one right here. And, the first page, they talk about your personal rates of return, for the last 3 years, for the last 5 years, for the last 10 years. Well, some years were really good, like 13%, other years not so good. But I'd never really looked at my 10-year average return, and it was only 5.5%. And I
Wow.
just shook my head and said, I've got to be able to do better than this.
Yeah.
And I'm getting closer to retiring. It's ways off yet, but And so I thought I've really got to make my money work harder. And I'd been hearing about investing in real estate and other types of investments and started to educate myself on that. And being in the interior design world, of course, I knew about Scott McGillivray from his HGTV. And so it was kind of a natural to go and do the Keyspire 3-day boot camp and become a Keyspire member. And that was a great foundation. I also heard about RAIN, the Real Estate Investing Network, and some of my RAIN colleagues are on tonight. Thank you for attending. And I joined their think tank, first of all, and that consisted of a small group of people who really wanted to learn more about all the different ways you could invest in real estate. And then I also did something called their incubator program, where we went away for once a quarter for a weekend and just got to know each other as a group, shared experiences, learned from each other. It was fantastic. And I made some wonderful connections that I still have today, and I'm sure will continue for many more years. And so all of that just brought me to this big kind of overwhelm, because there are so many different ways that you can invest in real estate, short of buying a property and finding a tenant and doing it on your own. So there's passive investing, there's BRRRRs, there's private equity investments, the single family, multifamily, like the list goes on and on. So part of what I think the think tank and incubator groups did for me was to help me narrow down on my strategy and recognize what my strengths are and what I want to be doing and which kinds of real estate investments are the best for me. And so, Natasha, I had, of course, heard about you and knew of you through both Keyspire and Rain, as you mentioned earlier, and happened to be in Calgary a couple of years ago where you were at an event live. So we got to meet each other in person. And so I already knew that you were, as you were saying, like 17 years of experience as a realtor in the Calgary, Edmonton markets. In fact, I went around with one of your team members in a snowstorm, uh, looking at properties in Calgary. So I know that you know the market really, really well. And when I heard that you were starting up a real estate investment trust, I was really interested. And so I attended a session such as this one, and one thing that stood out for me was the minimum $5,000 to get in. So at that time, I was already in the bigger REITs. You know, most of us are familiar with the Centurions, the Equitons, Greystone, and so on. And because I had moved money over from the bank, already, I was left with this kind of odd 9,000 and something dollars, and it wasn't enough to put with what I call the big guns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I thought, aha, I can put it into WealthShare. So I did, and I was one of the first 150 founding members. And I think it's really cool that I own part of these buildings
Yeah.
without having to do any of the work.
Right.
So, um, so the first year you guys did really well. I think it was around 11 point something percent.
11.1.
So, you know, already I was doing like twice as good as I had been doing with my bank investments. And so when I had another chunk of money available, I added that to what I have now. And I know you guys are ready for another very good year. And I guess I'll stop there and see what other questions you might have.
Well, before I go next, I kind of want to highlight a couple of things you said there was number one, we're all busy in life and reviewing how our even own investments are doing. It's kind of like reviewing our insurance and all other things. Like it's something that we don't do frequently enough. So I kind of like that that's how it started. But then you didn't stop there. Like it's about finding a strategy and what can I do and what am I interested in. So I think that was really, really neat. And to your point about the 9,000, like I cannot tell you how many people have random amounts in their registered accounts that it's like, well, what do I do with these things, right? So I'm really, really grateful that you support us at this time. And the 150 investors, I just want to point out why that's so important. So to get one of these off the ground, a mutual fund trust or a private REIT, you do have to have a 150 investor base to be qualified as a REIT to accept registered funds. And so you'll see other groups doing this, but I don't know if they're necessarily communicating that part of it. And so we really wanted to build a foundation of community, like this is what we're doing. And this really speaks to that. And it's something that we're all very proud of. I was on a call recently with another investor and she had her little, card still to show me. And it's just really awesome that you supported us from the get-go. So thank you. So we talked about kind of what led you to WealthShare. And I think you pointed out one thing that I think stood out about wanting to invest was the accessibility that, you had this number that the other groups wouldn't take. So that's certainly something, and that was a very intentional choice by us, by the way. And I think we kind of we shook some people when we came out with that because people were like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you having such a low minimum? And it speaks to the longevity that we're planning for. We want people to grow with us. We don't want to create a big barrier and make it inaccessible to people. We want people to grow with us, to get to experience what we're doing, exactly like you just shared. So that's really cool to see that come to light. But then also, as many of us know, I mean, it's really, really difficult now to just buy an investment property on your own with how prices
Mhm.
are in the marketplace. It's really hard to get in the game in the lending environment, and uncertainty and high rates and all kinds of things. So this is a way to get started at a very accessible point. But was there anything else that you would mention that kind of stood out in terms of like deciding to invest with us, or does that sort of cover it, kind of the relationship and the minimum as well?
Yeah, I have a few other things actually. Something else we spent a lot of time on at with the RAIN group, the incubator group, was thinking about our personal values and our business values. And I really like the values that WealthShare represents in that I remember listening to you speaking and talking about how when you purchased the first building, the Winston, and how
Mhm.
the very first thing was to reassure the tenants that everything was going to be okay because they had been in limbo for a long time. Nobody was
Mhm.
communicating, telling them what was going on. And you treat your tenants like clients, and that is how they should be treated. So that
Absolutely.
aspect was really important to me. Because I was still very much in a learning mode and will forever be in a learning mode. um,
Sure.
the fact that you from time to time would, send out an email saying, if you want to join us, we'll give you an update on how things are going with the Winston and our application for our MLI Select Mortgage and how we're stabilizing the building. And so for me, I was not only an investor, but I got to go on this whole learning adventure with you.
Right.
And that and it also made me feel, I think, in a way more I guess close, if you will, to the investment in terms of me understanding and feeling like I was part of it. So that was
Right.
great. And another thing that stood out is anybody who's gone into alternative investments or private REITs knows that you need to move your money from wherever it is
Mm.
to a custodian. And Olympia Trust is a big one. And you guys are with Atlas One. And I found the whole process of dealing with Atlas One was really smooth. And if you have a question, there is an actual live person who will answer the phone. And I remember you saying that was one reason you chose them out of some others that you could have chosen because of the level of customer service. And I have found the same thing with you guys. Like the odd time I've had a question, I've had Monique, your CFO, respond to me in an email. I've had Rodney, the chief operating officer, and your husband
Mhm.
give me a call back to explain something. You've been very accessible. And,
Yeah.
I'm happy with my other larger REITs that I'm in, but that level of service would just not be a thing.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
sure I would get my questions answered at some point. But
Sure.
and the other thing is with those larger, well, I'm really now talking, I guess, land development. So I'm in 3 different land development projects, and
Right.
they have, it's going to be at least 5 to 7 years before I see any returns on those. And I knew that going in, and I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
And I also knew that there would be very little to no communication in that time period. And there has been exactly that. No communication.
Right.
And yeah, I can go on their website and I can look up the project and there might be some kind of a little blurb on it, but it doesn't seem as tangible to me as a
Right.
smaller but
Mhm.
very successful and solid REIT like
Right.
WealthShare is. Yeah.
Um, a couple good points there. The Our offering is often compared to similar things that are, groups that are doing big development projects that have a place in a portfolio, but are very different than what we're doing. One thing, this, and Rodney actually kind of shone a light on this in the last few months too, is the great thing about a REIT that is doing what we're doing is the annual audit, the annual valuation means annually, there's potential for your actual investment and thus your actual net worth to grow with the REIT during that time. Whereas if you have a investment into a development or other private securities or startup companies or whatever they might be, during that course of kind of the waiting, your investment is you can't value it at something else during that time. So I feel like the lending environment out there too is caring more and more about your net worth these days. At least that's how it seems. So that's just something to consider when you're like planning out your portfolio and creating maybe a bit of sliver of different things. Is just how will that impact your financial plan over the next X amount of years, right?
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. One other thing, but I'm sure it will come back to me out of what
Actually, I just thought of something that I
Yeah.
talked about with Joanne today, and I've talked about this with Lynn, who's on the call as well, because I'm thinking ahead to when I need to convert my RSP into a RIF, a registered retirement income fund. And the government requires you to withdraw a certain amount each year once you hit age 71. So I always make sure that whatever I'm investing in my RSP will be appropriate also for a RIF when that time comes. So with the dividends that WealthShare is paying out, right now I'm in the DRIP program, so those dividends are reinvested into more shares. When I'm at a stage where I need to convert to a RIF and I'm required to pull money out, I can take the dividends in cash and still leave my WealthShare shares or units, whatever the right terminology is, leave them intact. So still continue to benefit from the investment and see it grow, but be able to pull out those dividends. And I have a few other investments that are not REITs that would operate in the same way.
Right. That's a really excellent point, actually. And you can change and adjust that with us as you need. I remember what I was going to say now. You mentioned Atlas One as our exempt market dealer. So Atlas One, their job is to really also ensure, first of all, that we're compliant with everything we need to be compliant with, but also to have those conversations with our investors around suitability and looking
Mhm.
at your whole portfolio. Does this make sense for you? Like, do you understand, the different risks of all the different types of investments out there, and does that align with you as an individual? Which is really important. Like if we were just doing a joint venture or something, like there would be no one asking both of us those questions. We would just be like, okay,
No,
we're going to do this, right?
got
We
the
would,
money, I'll take it.
yeah, let's go, right? So there is that extra layer of sort of thought into it, because you're going to be asked those questions, and it'll force you to think of an answer, which you might not have necessarily done that. And then to the comment about, yes, being accessible, that is really, really important to us. My cell phone number is very accessible. Everyone has it. And I'm actually proud of how few people actually use it, because that does mean I think that we're doing a pretty good job staying in touch with people. And the accessibility is a big thing. Like, we want you to know that we're here to answer your questions. And sometimes it's not even about specifically this. It's like, hey, I know you went through this. How did that go, or something, right? So we're here to share what we're learning. And then we do have, in terms of if you're using registered funds, you do still need to use a trust company. So Atlas One is the facilitator, but they will still require us to use either Olympia Trust, Odyssey Trust, or Western Pacific. And to your point earlier too, is there's a reason we have multiple trust companies, because we want that high level of service for you. And even when we did that, most other groups out there just have one, because there's a fee, it's work, you got to get approval. So we want you to have choice. We want it to be up to you how you want your investment processed. But then having the kind of Atlas One at the helm, once they're processing this, like, they make everything so easy and walk you through it step by step.
Yeah,
So I'm glad you had
they
that
really do.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Um, so, I mean, we talked about this a little bit already, but you talked a little bit about what your experience has been like investing with WealthShare so far. I think we have covered a lot of points there. Was there anything else you wanted to add there?
I think the only thing is that I would add is, I'm very keen on the Alberta market.
Mm,
I may at some point purchase, um, an active asset. What I Annie and I came very close actually last year, this close. Um, I think the Alberta market has still a lot of potential. And so I just think too, for anyone who's interested in being in the Alberta market, but maybe doesn't want to buy an actual property on their own or a big multifamily building on their own, this is a great way to be in a market that's growing and will continue to grow.
100%. That is what a lot of our investors are keen on. They, believe in the Alberta market as well. And in the multifamily space, there is a lot of advantages definitely to being in this province from just how we can manage the assets and what we can do. So I absolutely love that. And a lot of our investors are definitely from Ontario or British Columbia. So it's a way to access
Interesting.
the market without physically having to do it yourself and be here, right? And then just to kind of extend on that, like getting into the multifamily asset class as one individual or just all on your own is pretty like it's a pretty big barrier to entry, not just financially, but even just like the amount of work that goes into putting these deals together. And it really does take a team. And, I know for us during acquisition time, it's like the three of us are just full hands on deck, for months and months. And we even need to expand upon that. So it's a way to get into this kind of class of investment without having to bear all that yourself. So really good point. Um, what would you tell people who are considering investing with WellShare?
I would just say if you're not already in a REIT of some sort, like don't even hesitate. I have such confidence in what you guys are doing, and with the low entry minimum and the market that you're in and your knowledge of the market, and you now have a proven track record in purchasing these large buildings, stabilizing them, getting the rents up to market rate, building that value for your investors. I say go for it. And even if you have other REITs, which I do, and they're focused in other geographical areas, this is a great way to diversify your portfolio.
Mhm. 100%.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, the last kind of point we had here, and then maybe there's some questions, but um, this is more of like a broader topic to the real estate investing space. Um, what advice would you give to someone looking to get started with real estate investing, period? Like that's a big topic. Do you get asked this question? Or what would you say to people if someone's brand new to it?
I do get asked the question, and what I say is, well, I can tell you how I did it. It may not be the perfect way, but I tend to be a person who, I'm very curious, and I'm a constant learner. I just love finding out of it. Once I get an interest in something, I just ask anybody that I know. I look around for groups that I can join. I figure out how I can get more knowledge and education on the topic. So I would say, be curious, ask questions. There's a lot of information out there that is free that you don't have to pay for. I mean, your YouTube channel, Natasha, is one example. Of course, all of us know to be careful where we're getting that information from and the source of that information, and is it reputable and factual. Um, and then, I joined the two groups, Keyspire and the Real Estate Investment Network, and that has been invaluable to surround myself with other people who are also curious and want to learn more about the same topic. Um, let's see what else.
That's
And
huge.
then as you go along learning, figure out what your own strengths and interests are, and therefore what other people do you need to have around you to be successful in real estate investing. And, build that team, network, make those connections. I love the expression that your network is your net worth. And it's so true. Like I couldn't have done all that I've done without having other people around me, many who are more knowledgeable. And I find people who are interested in investing in real estate are so happy to share their knowledge and their experience, and they just love talking about it. So don't be shy and ask away.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been my experience is very much number one is the network for sure and getting out there, getting educated, talking to people. And I really like what you said too about finding kind of and knowing what your strengths are and looking for what you might need in other people because we all can't do it all. We all can't be great at everything. So who is complementary to you? That is awesome. And I like Rain used to do these exercises where you would highlight kind of like what you can bring to the table to possibly say do a joint venture or something. And it was really a thorough way to look at like, okay, this is what I have. And that could mean capital in no time and you have lots of time and no capital or what skills you have and apply that because I find often people downplay, I think, what they can bring to the table or what they have available and don't necessarily go out there and be honest about that. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's so true. I've really found that, going through the think tank and incubator groups, and when you really sit down and think about what you do know, often you know more than you think, but then it also makes you realize where you need to get other people involved and bring their strengths to the table
Yes,
as well. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. Is there any questions anyone has thought of that has come up this evening that you might want to ask? You could type it or you can also unmute. Don't need to. No? Also quiet.
I'll ask one question. No, no,
Okay,
bearing in
thanks,
mind,
Chloe.
I had to
Oh,
join.
hello, Colleen.
Hey, Judy. I had to join a tiny bit late, so I may have missed, but what has WealthShare got as like the next project? I know there's intake of new investment that you're open to. How does that work for you guys to allocate to a specific project, or what do you do when you're in between finding a new building? Like how do you keep the money at work so that the returns are good for everybody during that sort of time period? Just curious.
Mhm.
I don't know much about that area.
That's a really good point. You don't want money just sitting there doing nothing for a long period of time. So we currently we have several opportunities in front of us. So for us right now, and this problem might flip in the future, but the problem right now, not problem, but is our goal number one is to acquire at least one asset every single year. And that is intentional because of future plans and hitting actual refi cycles in the future. So that's our goal at a minimum. We have things in front of us right now that will depend on how well capital raising goes this year. So there's a little bit dependent upon that. But we will be looking at new or newish properties again here in Calgary and or Edmonton. And we have things we can pull the trigger on, kind of by this summer, depending how things go this spring. If let's say we don't quite hit our largest goal, which is there's two properties that are kind of in the same sort of price point of Winston, where we'd be in that kind of $10 million up to even about 14 million. So depending how capital raising goes, if not, though, we don't want to ever overextend ourselves or be, in a way that's get us into trouble. We do also have several things in our sites that are more in the like townhouse project style, similar to things that we bought in Edmonton that we can also acquire, that we have direct lines with the actual builders on those. So it will depend a little bit how we do. And in the future, you know, it might be the opposite problem where we don't have the opportunities, but we have the capital. But right now, it's certainly more about getting the capital so we can execute on the opportunities in front of us that we do have access to right now. So the good thing about kind of being in the market is people know who I am. They know, and now they know what WealthShare is doing. Like I get emails now, like for WealthShare consideration, for WealthShare consideration. So which is really, really cool to see that we've kind of made a name for ourselves also in that space, because that's what we want, is people sending us opportunities and things that you might not just be able to find, right? So really good question though, but I have a feeling that kind of will switch over time. But right now it's certainly, yeah, we can acquire. It's just what can we raise this year? So good question. There's a question about the WealthShare offering. So maybe I'll just put up the offering really quick. The other thing, you know, we didn't really talk about, but I did write a kind of guide to passive investing and what questions to consider when you're looking at different REITs or different funds or different you know, passive opportunities out there. Like there's so much out there in the world now that we could consider. The Atlas One platform, if you haven't been on there, I'm kind of joking. It's like a kind of like an Amazon of private securities. Like there's so much different things on there now. But the point is like, okay, what questions should I be asking? How do I know what to look for? And to be very honest with you, now I know because I've been through this and we've kind of built WealthShare. So if anyone's ever interested in that guide, please just shoot me an email or text and I'll send it over to you. But for some reason, my Canva is not loading. Okay, well, I'll just talk about it verbally then if it's while it's loading. Was there any other questions before I talk about the WealthShare offering that you guys wanted to bring up?
Can I ask one more just about the tax treatment? Because like you, Judy, these sorts of investments fit wonderfully in your RSP or your TFSA. And then I haven't, had to think too much about what would happen if we were to invest through one of our holdcos, or something where we would then need to figure out how to treat the distributions if we were to take the dividends. I had read something that sounded like the what might have originally been sort of a return of capital for a while before you had to start recognizing income. Has that tax treatment changed? And I know you're not an accountant, but can you speak just in general terms to how it's this type of investment is treated if it's not in a registered account?
Generally speaking, dividends or distributions are taxable income. Now, to your point, there is conversations to be had, I guess, with your accountant, and then there is also, like, if this is a personal investment or through a corporate entity, how you want to do that. But any of those, if you do want specific kind of response from us, I would probably loop in Monique just to make sure that it's appropriate. But the short answer is it's income. So there is a taxable event there, which is what makes registered funds so nice. But I would say we have about half and half in terms of our investor pool of who's using registered funds and who is using cash. So the cash, if there is a distribution, like I said, you can take it out as cash or reinvest it into the fund. And by the way, if anyone wants to meet to like dive into the full WealthShare thing, let me know. Before I forget though, we are doing a 10% unit bonus for any new investment of $10,000 or more into the WealthShare Trust until the end of February. So if you are considering us at all, that is something that you might want to take advantage of. We've never done that before. It's something that we're kind of coordinating with RSP season this year as a way to provide a bonus to you guys, and also to really give back to our group. And one thing I wanted to point out when we were talking about comparing different funds and opportunities and offerings out there is that the WealthShare portfolio is owned 100% by the investors. It needs to be very clear that, like, I don't own the portfolio. Our other co-founders do not. We're investors as well, but 100% of the real estate is owned by the investors. And that is not necessarily the case everywhere you look out there. So that alone is something that is kind of cool to understand, especially when you're kind of driving by the properties and you can understand that you definitely do have an ownership in these assets. So, okay, so just to review the offering quickly, we are a private REIT, WealthShare Real Estate Trust, and we are, oh my gosh, we are currently priced at $11.10 per unit. So the return that got us to $11.10, we were at $10 the previous year. So as a result of the 2023 returns and audit, that adjusted our trust unit to $11.10. So people like to compare this sort of like a share price. It's a similar idea, but called trust unit. So that's our current unit price. We're going to be announcing our 2024 results by the end of February, which we are excited to be able to share how we did. We have completed our, we're at the tail end of our financial audit and finalizing that. And so as an investor, you get annually a clear financial look at how we are doing with audited financials delivered to you annually. Those are always held in the EMD's platform. So on Atlas One, you can see those. So that's a really important thing to be aware of, and something that should give you comfort and transparency. The fourth one there, who we are open to, this is also something that is not the same everywhere you go. We are open to eligible and accredited investors here in Canada. So if you don't know the definitions of eligible and accredited, you can give it a quick Google, or also our team at Atlas One is there to help you. They will determine which one you are, and there are limits in Canada put on, what is suitable, that word suitable, for accredited investors versus eligible. And so it is important to understand which type of investor you fall in, and it's based on your income or net worth of you, or combined with a spouse. So that's what that is, and we've done everything we can to be as open to as many people as possible, basically, here in Canada. You can use your registered funds, like we discussed earlier. So I think everybody was aware of that. And we are in kind of open continuous fund. So often this structure can be used, like we talked about, for a development, let's say. So someone's going to raise X amount of money, they're going to go develop this thing, they're going to close the fund. We are more similar to, people are usually familiar with the Equiton Apartment Fund, which is an open fund. And as it grows, as their investment grows, as their portfolio grows, the investors take advantage of the growing portfolio. Similar thing here. So there's no like end, we're done now kind of idea. Now, the issuer fees are a really important thing. Because I mentioned we don't own the real estate as the managers, we're the caretakers of this fund. We are co-founders and also trustees as well. We have to get paid somehow to manage the fund. And so this is how we, as the managers, can obtain some sort of compensation for our job. Now, the issuer fees is something I highly suggest, if you're comparing other groups, you take a look at, because often they hide this. They don't put it up front like we're doing right now. And it's not necessarily as fair as some others out there. So that's definitely something to look at. So how we get paid is, if there's a acquisition, there's a 1% acquisition fee, financing or refinancing fees, and then there's an annual management fee for us to manage the fund. The last line there on performance bonus is really what's in it for us. The first few things are really just kind of keeping the lights on, but the performance bonus is really what's kind of in it for us in the long run. And what that means is that we would be able to obtain a performance bonus, and that is 20% of cash distributions or returns that year, only if the investors have achieved an 8% preferred return. So if we do not hit an 8% return to our investors, we as the management group do not obtain any sort of performance bonus. So we are motivated to hit the 8% at a minimum. Like I said, we did 11.1% in 2023, and our target is actually 12%. So everything we are analyzing in terms of properties and what we're looking to do with these pieces of real estate is to hit a 12% return. That's our goal. Just a little note there, people often think these issuer fees are not like management fees like you get with your financial institution, where you have your returns and then they take their fees. Your 12% targeted fee already keeps in line, just like any other operating expense, what we need to charge to keep the lights on in terms of these actual fees. And then the last thing is dealer fees. It's important to disclose. Funds are required to disclose what we would pay for, capital raisers or other groups to raise capital for us to pay, the EMDs, the people who process these. And now ours is up to a maximum of 6%. We have never spent up to 6% for one individual raise, but that's what's disclosed in our offering memorandum. So it's an important line item that you might want to compare with other groups out there. So today you invest with us, you get your unit price of $11.10. If you invest $10,000, it's like you're investing $11,000. That's the bonus. As Judy was saying earlier, it's like you get that immediate sort of lift to your investment, which most of us who own real estate like that kind of type of lingo. So you get the 10% bonus immediately, which is really, really cool to see.
Sorry to interject.
Yeah.
Is that for all registered accounts or just the RRSPs?
All. Yeah.
All.
All. Or cash.
Awesome.
You can use anything. Any kind of funds work. Yeah, it's open to everyone. That's a really good question, Eve, actually. So, and it's important to note too, when we make a offering like this, like some sort of incentive, it needs to be accessible to everyone. So, yeah, cash, registered funds, TFSAs, LIRAs, whatever works. Our ESPs, the new home buyer savings account, that works as well. So, yeah, good question.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. I won't dive into it too much, but on our website and on the Atlas One platform, you can see, of course, the full offering, all of the documents, all the financials, everything you would need to see. So what I will do is I'll put a link in the comments here. If you want to go check that out, you absolutely can. But that's just really briefly about us. And on our YouTube channel, we have full hour-long info sessions about WealthShare if you want to go check it out, where we go into detail about strategy and how we make returns and what's going on in the market and how we manage these properties. And there's a lot of information on there as well. But that's just to give a quick sort of highlight of what we're about and what we're doing with your money, most importantly. That's really the most important element. And like I said, we do a lot of these types of events ongoing, and love to be building a community here. So let's see, was there any other comments here? Oh, good question, Colleen. Colleen asks about a redemption fee or lockup rate. So there is no, you're not locked in, but we do have a redemption penalty in the first 3 years. So because we are buying and holding real estate, we're not coming in and out of things quickly. So we kind of want you to ideally be in it with us for the long run as well. Now, that being said, we know things happen. So there is a redemption fee inside of the first 3 years. So in the first year, if you apply to redeem, there's a 3% fee. The second year is 2%, and the third year is 1%. And then after that, there is no fee to redeem. So ideally, you're kind of thinking minimum 3 years. I would suggest, even ideally, we're thinking longer than that. But that being said, I mean, no one can predict where, any of our lives will be. So that's a really, really good question, Colleen. I appreciate it. Anyone else? Judy, do you have anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, the only other thing I think is to reinforce that you can redeem without penalty after 3 years, which for most, I'll call them off market, like off stock market investments, it would be a longer hold before you could redeem.
Yeah.
Without penalty. But the fact that you even can redeem and pay a penalty whenever you want, some investments don't even have that. It's like you're locked in for a period of time, period,
Yeah.
end of discussion, no matter what. Yeah. So
Absolutely. That's a very good point. I mean, which makes sense often, especially if you're investing in a development or something, like you
yeah,
said, open
yeah.
it, they close it, and then that's it, right? And that's a question that comes up too. It's like, well, so and so is advertising X% return, and like we're not trying to be that. We're trying to kind of thread the needle of being kind of risk adverse and maximizing returns as best as possible. We take a lot of pride and care that our investors are investing their retirement savings with us. This is really, really important that we are kind of maximizing, but we're not taking big risks. We're not taking big swings or big gambles with your money, and we don't want to. We want to have a strong, solid foundation that's kind of predictable, like making boring sexy again, right? that's the goal. Boring, predictable real estate is really honestly how most kind of wealth is generated in the real estate space. It's like over time, and just letting it kind of do its thing.
Colleen, I think I've heard you say this, set it and forget it.
That's what we want to aim for. Anytime you hear about your real estate, there's usually water leaking or some kind of problem, right?
True. When the property managers call, it's usually not good, right? That's awesome. Well, I don't think there's any other questions, so maybe we will leave
If
it
you
there.
still have time, sorry, I have a couple technical questions, but
Please.
so just expand on what you were talking about on how you get paid, just so I understand with other REITs as well. Like you aim to give the preferred amount of 8% to the investors first. So then from whatever's left over after that 8%, you would get 20% of that.
Of only the cash distribution portion that's available that year. So your returns every year will be made up, potentially, there's no guarantees, but just like if you owned your own property, you'd have your equity component and then your cash flow component, right? So
Right.
with this passive investment, it's similar, and most other REITs should have something similar. So our performance bonus will be based upon the cash distributions annually, and only if we hit an 8% preferred return. So if we hit 7.7 or something, we do not get any sort of performance bonus. We still would get our management fee, of course, to make sure everything is taken care of, but we wouldn't be getting that extra bonus, which is really, thinking in the long run, what is really important for us in that kind of long run. But that's a good question.
So if it hits 8%, then from the 100%, you get 20%, or you pay out 8% and then you get 20% from 92%.
Only of whatever cash is distributed. So let's say there was a 10% return, 2% of that was cash.
Right.
We would only get 20% of whatever that 2% is. So we would only get 20% of the cash distribution, because we can't like give ourselves equity, right? So that's more like a future salary, let's say. It's not salary, but you could kind of think of it that way. So it would only be on the cash portion of the return, and a 20% payment to the management team and 80% to the investors, only of the cash portion.
Right. So the preferred return is an increase in equity of 8%. That's what has to be hit?
Total of 8%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either
but
way,
it might
whichever
vary
it is.
each year, right? So and the equity component is also determined by annual appraisals. So it's not like we're deciding, okay, this is what we think it's worth this year. It's an actual appraisal of each asset gets appraised every year. and it actually gets attached to our offering memorandum. So annually, you also see the appraisals that prove, okay, this is why this property was valued this is why now we have this equity in the portfolio,
Right.
which is
Got it.
really great. They're fun to dig through, the appraisals. What's going on over
In
there?
your spare time, right?
Yeah. Or if you're even doing your own things, like you can compare it to our appraisals, right? Like it's kind of interesting to see how these things get
Right.
appraised. So really good question.
I have one more about a TIFSA because I'm just in the process of opening that up, but I don't know if this is the right place to be asking this question. If I invested through my TIFSA, I'm still learning about the TIFSA because it's new for me. So
TFSA, right?
yeah, sorry. Yes.
Oh, that's okay.
TFSA. So let's just make it easy. I invest $20,000. And then you have the DRIP program, which is basically any dividends or interest coming back to me just gets reinvested back in.
Correct.
How would I pull out? Let's say I did want whatever, $100 or $200 income coming out of that return a month. Are you paying like on a monthly basis or quarterly basis or annual?
Annual.
Annual. Okay.
For now. And the reason for that is if we do a distribution or even our annual valuation, like it's extremely expensive. So if we were to do it more frequently, we'd honestly just it would take money away from you guys is really why. At some point, maybe as we grow, it'll make sense to do it maybe semi-annually, or I mean, eventually, we're talking billions of dollars of real estate, you would do it quarterly, but that would be a pretty substantial thing. So it's like a good thing. There's all these regulations and processes, but they are costly in terms of getting to that point. So right now it's annually. That's kind of what makes the most sense. But yeah, so you can use your TFSA if you withdraw. Obviously, like if the return goes back in there, whether you choose to withdraw it or reinvest it is totally up to you. And you can also change it, as time goes on if you choose to. You like you're not stuck because you started it that way today.
Right. So this is just a general question with the TIFSA. So if I get a return and I pull that money out, that doesn't affect the amount that I could put back in next year, right? Because it's the growth, like the return you're getting. Does anyone know the answer to that?
Like your maximum contribution amount?
Right. So like once you're pulling the dividends or whatever out, that's just your excess amounts, right? So it's not affecting next year's contribution amount, for example.
I don't believe so, but
I've had some experience with that with the kids, and you will always have your new annual contribution amount that the government allows you to have. If you've taken money out during the year, you have to wait until the following year before you can recontribute that. So you do have the opportunity to put that back in. And you also have the opportunity every calendar year to put in the maximum amount. So it's kind of a flexible program because you could at one point borrow from it or take some money out for something else. You just can't get it back in there growing tax-free that same year. You'd have to wait until the following year, was my experience with that.
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes
But if it's excess, right, because it's the returns, then it really shouldn't affect any of that space, should it?
No, it's not going to affect, like you still have your 7,000 you can put in the next year, and you don't ever have to put it back. It's not like repaying your RRSP if you borrowed to buy a home or something. You can always take money out of it. You don't have to put any back in, and you can always still make your next year's annual contribution. But you do have the opportunity, if you wanted, to put money back in and let it grow tax-free if you had taken some of your growth out, which is nice because that lets you shelter more tax-free at some point if that fit what you wanted to do.
Exactly.
There is one more question I'll answer from Lynn. I don't know if she's still here, but it says, what is the target distribution versus target overall return? Okay, this is a really good question. And like most things in real estate, it depends. So so annually there, you have the potential for equity growth and cash distributions or cash flow, just like you would on your own income property you might have. Now, when we set out the fund, we knew, like, we're obviously thinking long term, and there we want to buy real estate every single year for good reason. But starting out, we knew our cash distributions would increase over time, because as we're growing a portfolio, just like when you do it on your own, your first year or two, it's like high cost, high startup. We have high equity growth because we're making money by what we're buying and managing it really well. So our kind of target cash distribution for this year, and probably maybe up to past year 5, is anywhere from 2 to 4% of a cash distribution annually. Then as we see good equity growth during that time. Then as we think about years, 6, 10, now we can start getting into our refinance cycle with the properties we bought in year 1, 2, 3, 4. So ideally speaking, to get the full sort of advantage of like us starting up this company and building this portfolio, thinking beyond 5 years could be, really, really smart because of that. And there isn't opportunities to, like refinance these properties sooner, because we have terms on them, and we're not doing big projects or BRRRRs or any of that. So that's kind of what you can expect from us. Now, that being said, there is no guarantee or promises. It is still real estate, but that's what we're targeting. And in the first couple of years, we knew it would be equity growth. So 2023 returns, we had a $10 unit price that went to $11.10. There was no cash distribution that year. It was full equity growth. And then we'll be announcing our returns for 2024 by the end of this month. So yeah, good question. Again, it's a set it and forget it, really. Like that's really the name of the game for sure. Good questions. Love it. I'm going to, first off, Judy, I cannot thank you enough. Really, really appreciate your time and your support. And we're happy to, show you homes in the snow anytime you want. Team's very hardworking. We're here.
Oh my gosh. I just have to share with the group, it was literally a snowstorm, and we were tromping around like up to our thighs in snow to get in to look at these homes.
True Canadian moment.
And most people who know me know that I'm an overpacker. And I remember debating whether I should bring both my high over the knee boots and my short boots, or if I should be sensible. Well, as per usual, I was not sensible, but it worked in my favor that time because I had my high over the knee boots.
You were prepared.
That's wonderful. Prepared.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again. Very much appreciated. So good to see everybody. I love the cameras on. It was really, really nice. I'm going to put, I don't know if Michael, did you put a link to Atlas One in the chat by chance, if you wouldn't mind?
I can throw that in there. Yeah, no problem.
That'd be great. Michael's on the call here. He's part of our investor relations team at WealthShare. So we're all here to support anything you might need. Even if something comes up later, please reach out. We want to help support you, whether it's related to WealthShare or not. We are here as a resource for you, and are open books in kind of every way. So I really thank everyone for being here this evening, and it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, Judy. Thanks so much again.
You're welcome. I had fun too.
Good. And there, Michael has the code there in the chat. And just bear in mind that the 10% is only until the end of this month. So that is on the table as a bonus for you to take advantage of. If you're kind of thinking about investing anytime this year anyway, then take advantage of it and get that 10% equity boost right out the gate. Okay.
Sorry,
well,
one more quick question.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago, you mentioned that you had, I don't know if it was a video or a presentation where you go into all kinds of details about how you make the purchases and whatever, all kinds of stuff. I missed it. Was it a video or it's a post somewhere or?
Yeah, there's two main resources. If you go to the link that Michael put in on the Atlas One platform, there is a recording of a event we did with Atlas One where they actually walked you through the platform as well and how to invest. But then also on our YouTube channel, like we've done all kinds of other events. But if you're looking more about about WealthShare, what the steps are in the process, that recording is best. Maybe we'll just send that out as well as a thank you to everyone who kind of was here today. Because it was with Atlas One. So you get to see Ryan's face. He'll be your contact there at Atlas One if you end up moving forward anyway. So you'll know who you're dealing with. But we can send that out. So if you follow Michael's link on the offering for WealthShare, it'll be there. If you have any problems, reach out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody.